Hello, everybody, and welcome to another week of Tales from the Tavern. So, you guys will never believe it. One, I remembered to unmute again, so, we've got a streak going now. And two, I even thought to check to make sure the input for my mic was correct, and it wasn't, and I still fixed it before we got onto the screen, and I am so darn proud of myself. If you watch the stream regularly, you know this is an ongoing issue. So we nailed it tonight, as Katie said. Yes. So everybody, I see people in chat already identifying who is here tonight. So we have Yachts going, hey, isn't that Samuel? And everybody is very excited to see Sheryl and Holly. So and PressX. So I'm just gonna dive right in and let you guys start introducing yourselves. So Samuel from Plot Hooks, we're gonna have you start, and we'll go around to everybody on the screen.
Hi everyone, my name is Samuel. I'm the founder of the Plot Hooks Creative Network. We started as a podcast, now we're an entire host of things, just creating all sorts of different things in the TTRPG space. You might know me from the podcast, from Disaster Hamsters, Oath of Destiny, the upcoming supplements Villagers and Sentient. Lots of toes and lots of pawns, but we just love telling collaborative stories and inspiring a whole new wave of storytellers in this awesome brand new hobby.
Yes.
Or to join this awesome brand new hobby.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I'm really excited to have you back again. And next we're going to go over to Ryan.
Hey, I'm Ryan Mossberger. I play Cult on the Dice Populi podcast. I'm also the community manager over there, always with the fans, always talking with them, chatting, trying to make sure that we're staying on track. I also recently just started a YouTube channel and a TikTok because I hate my life, and I decided to make it even more cramped and constrictive than it already was. And that's RunDMG, and I make a lot of memes and stuff. I just wanted an avenue besides Dice Populi so I could put out stuff that maybe they don't like. I have to convince all my other castmates, hey, do you like this meme? And sometimes they're like, yeah, no, I'll just put it out on my own. So I do that. And I do little short videos about AD&D history, and just fun little videos and video memes and stuff like that. So yes. I just love the game and love torturing myself by forcing into every facet of my life.
I love your RunDMG videos. I think they're awesome. I think they're so much fun. So I can't wait to see more. I mean, I love Dice Populi too. I'm finally all caught up, so yay. I can finally listen to them as they release. And all right, next we will go over to PressXToJump.
Hi, I'm Steven, otherwise known in this community as PressXToJump. And by the way, yes, I am okay. I am fantastic today. I am starting a Twitch channel called PressXToJump. I'm going to be starting Shepherd Saturdays, playing Mass Effect Legendary Edition, my absolute favorite video game series of all time, other than The Legend of Zelda. And I'm very happy to be here for what might be my 1.5 time.
Yeah, 1.5 times. That sounds good. Well, thanks for coming back on. And I know that we've had some conversations on the side, but I'm also very excited for the Legendary Edition of Mass Effect. So
yes,
I cannot wait. I can't wait to see how they've redone it all. So awesome. Okay, let's see. And next we'll go over to Holly.
Hi, I'm Holly. I'm tonight's British interloper. Very, very, very. I'm not sure if it's late here or early here, but I'm here and I'm very happy to be here. My most recent stuff that I've been working on, I was part of the team that wrote Disaster Hamsters with Samuel and Plot Hooks. And I'm also working on one of the newer releases that's coming out soon, Villagers. Really, really excited about that. I'm also acting as the disability and accessibility consultant advisor on both pieces, which I'm really, really proud of, as I'm a disabled person myself. So that's something that I find really, really important. I do occasionally stream. It's been a little while, but I do occasionally stream just under the name Tartan Manatee, which is how you can find me online. At the moment, I'm working my way through the original Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 in preparation for Baldur's Gate 3 coming out in full release, ready to play it online from a brand new perspective, and it's been really, really fun. I'm also just starting to work on my very first own written supplement, which is tentatively called Murders at the Feizu Morgue, because I do love a good pun. But hopefully I might have some more information about that at some point when I've got a few more ideas fleshed out. But I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm really happy to be here tonight. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and I am glad that you and I got to chat a little bit before, because I mentioned the stream, and you were like, well, I'd be interested, and I'm like, well, great, let's get you on this Sunday.
Yeah, why not? I've not been terrified ever since, it's fine.
Aw. I promise we won't be too scary.
Nah, you're all right. You're all fine.
And next we are going to go over to Sheryl.
It's me. Hi, I'm Sheryl. As Ryan said, I'm also a masochist and do way too many things with my time. So individually, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube as The Roving Naturalist, where I make environmental education videos and stuff. But I'm also the showrunner for the Nature Check project, where we play video games and TTRPGs on Twitch, and then also publish things on YouTube and podcast platforms. Basically, we're scientists play video games and TTRPGs and talk about the real-life science that underlies the world building in all of those games.
That's so cool. I love that idea.
It is really cool.
I really need to check that out. I'm super glad that we were able to connect and all of that stuff. Yeah, it'll be great. So thank you all so much for coming to hang out tonight. And I'm gonna start us off. I'm gonna lob one to you guys. Okay, this is a really easy question because we talked about it very briefly ahead of time. Do your dice have to match?
Most of the time for me, I have a set way of doing it. I have different dice for different characters. I think the only dice I have that don't match are for when I played a goblin. Purely because I feel like goblins, if a goblin was to have a dice set, they wouldn't be a matching set. They would have been that one taken from this place or that one taken from this place, and just a complete mismatch and a big jumble of dice, perfect for a goblin. They're the only set I don't have that matches those. So I would say 99% of the time, I think you should have matching sets. But I'm very much a dice
But
goblin,
in a
so.
way, that is a matching set because it matches the goblin. So...
I mean, that is that is a really good point, and I reckon I could get away with it. I reckon I could say all my dice sets match if I went with that idea, that sort of thinking behind it. I approve of that.
I believe that, and my personal opinion, I think dice sets have to match, at least for me, but I'm also one of those people that I don't hoard dice. Like, I have 2 different sets of dice. I have, like, my purple ones, and then I have, like, my blood-soaked ones, my blood-stained ones, and that's the only dice that I have. And that's the only dice that I've had for 10 years. So
Wow.
I don't have to have a whole lot of dice, but the dice sets do have to match. So if I lose one, I'm buying another one.
I'm always, like, I don't think about it, but my dice sets always do match. Like, I never really mix and match unless I'm throwing out, like, a lot of D6s. Or there's, like, as a DM, if I'm doing some like weird attack that's like 10 D8, I don't have any matching 10 D8s. So of course I got to reach into a bag and toss them. But yeah, thinking about it, like, I always use matching sets for my characters, and I'll often buy a new set for a character if I'm like crafting it up and I know it's coming up at like an in-play session. I'll buy a new set.
Yeah.
I'm a forever DM, so I don't really have too much issues as far as like actually having them connected with a particular character. So usually I just have a giant pile of the like 5 or 6 sets that I actually own in front of me, and I just reach down and pick one up. So I'm a little bit of a rebel in terms of I have 6 matching sets in front of me, but I don't necessarily just play with just one. So I'm a little bit of a rebel.
You don't have like a TPK set that you keep just there. No. The players are getting a little antsy. Time to break out the good ones, the Cohibas.
Yeah.
What the metal dice are for, because it makes that nice loud sound when you roll.
Exactly.
Especially now that we're all online, because then they can still hear you roll even when it means nothing over Zoom. So it's great.
Yeah, no, I definitely approve of metal dice being a TPK dice. When my players hear those or see them coming out in their little box, they're like, oh no. That means I'm about to just destroy something, and it might be them.
See, I have a whole bunch of sets, but it's because I have really terrible luck. Like, I roll 2s like nobody's business, so I just, like, cycle through them every night, regardless of if I'm DMing or playing. I'm just like, I can't. Everybody goes in jail for a little while because I can't deal with the 2s.
So it's time for you to just play a character that only uses D2s.
I guess.
Or find Will Wheaton and give him his curse back.
No.
That's probably a little harder.
It's true.
Yeah, that's like some sort of offering and sacrifice, I think.
Oh gosh. You have to like burn his Star Trek ensign uniform or something to get him to show up.
Gotta burn the onesie.
Oh my gosh.
Just draw the Enterprise sigil on the floor instead of a pentagram. Watch him phase in.
Oh my gosh. Oh, amazing. Well, we've started to get some questions from chat, so we're going to dive right in. The first one that we got, let's see. I'm going to say this name wrong, and I'm really, really sorry. Rataziel? Maybe? Somebody correct me if I'm saying that wrong.
It's Rataziel, I think.
Okay.
So...
I believe I know who that is.
Oh, well, I for sure know who it is. So.
Oh, that's fair.
Question for the DMs in the group. What is your best killed a player story? Or, if you don't DM, your best player death story?
I'm mad at you, Rataziel.
That's a good one.
I'm going to cheat and answer that question because the best story that I have there is one where I actually did not end up killing the player. But it's just such a hilarious story that and close enough that it's just worth telling. The party was in the middle of investigating an ancient ruin, of course, because there's dungeons in the name of the game. And they were inside of what essentially was an ancient bathhouse. And part of it was collapsed, and they were investigating over in the rubble area. They got attacked by some ropers, and one of them got down to about 4 hit points or so, and they finally beat the creature by polymorphing it into a beaver. But then he tried to walk away and got bit by the beaver at only a couple of hit points and almost died from the beaver. And so in frustration, what they decided to do, thankfully he ended up at 2 hit points, but then what they decided to do was just to flush the polymorph beaver down the arcane toilet and just leave the room. And that is still the single best close character death moment that I have ever had in any game, and it's going to be hard to ever top this moment.
Oh my gosh.
That's amazing. A beaver and just like that's
I can
brilliant.
just
love
walk
that.
away from this.
It's like the rabbit of Caer Banog, but beaver form, bigger teeth. So I've not actually managed to kill any of my players yet in my campaign. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or if I'm letting the side down. They've gotten really lucky with me so far. I've worked really hard to not have them die because I think I'd feel really guilty. But I did nearly lose one of my own characters last year. My Vengeance Paladin, Tiefling Vengeance Paladin called Visera, decided it would be a really good idea to sacrifice herself so the rest of the party could escape. Basically, big explosion, and we were all just like, I was sort of sobbing. My friend was sobbing. The DM was just sat there like, "What have I done?" And we'd all agreed she was dead. That was the end of it. But then he messaged me a couple of days later and went, "Look, roll me a death save. I want to see if we can bring her back and you not have to build a new character, but we're not going to tell the others." So, okay, no problem. So I rolled my death save and I got a nat 20 on the first go. I was like, I'm alive! So we talked about it a little bit and we worked it all out and we agreed that what we were going to do is, as far as the rest of my teammates knew, the party members knew, my character was dead and that I would be coming back a few weeks later with a new character. They go off and they do the next couple of weeks without me, mourning the character's loss and all the rest of it. And then, just as they're about to escape the tunnels that they're in, the mountain that they're in, they come across the bad guys, these giant sort of humanoid rats that have been hunting us all through this mountain, who are stood there threatening them, and they have a hooded prisoner who looks like she's been badly beaten and abused. They can't make out this prisoner's face. So one of the characters decides that whatever happened to Vizira must have been really awful, and he won't let it happen to whoever this poor person is. He'll put them out of their misery. And shoots me. Just straight up like, well, Vizira's dead, it can't be her, so that must be another captive. They don't deserve to be a slave, no one should be a slave. Just crossbow bolt straight through. It's like, okay, gosh. Didn't see that one coming. Fortunately, I'd healed up just enough. I took something like 60 points of damage once it all rolled up, but everything was ridiculous. But I was just sat there like, all you hear from behind the hood is, Val, I'm going to kill you! And they all went, huh! So yeah, we came very close with that one. It was just the fact that they knew full well that I would have a new character, and they still decided to shoot it.
Just to make sure.
Like, thanks for that.
Oh, gosh.
I think.
Oof.
I definitely need to work on killing some of my players, though.
I've only had one experience killing players. I've gotten close a couple of times, but one actually, and it was a TPK. And I love the story because it's so telegraphed that they shouldn't have done what they did. So I was playing we're DMing Out of the Abyss campaign, and there is near the kind of closer to the middle part, there is some chances to like interact with some of the demon lords that have come into the Underdark. One of them being any of them being way above anything that like any like a 3rd to 7th level character could handle. And I like try to describe to them, like they try to do all this stuff, and like they try to like sneak by her, and they try to do this and they try to do that. And she's like, oh, she notices you're there. You try to cast spell her. It doesn't work. She's immune to this like thing. She has a legendary resistances. And they're like, well, I guess she's just really tough. We should fight her then. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, wait, what? And before I could like try to dissuade them, I also mentioned that she's like, in this particular thing, she's surrounded by like hundreds of servants, and like there's an intense amount of like, even if they were to fight some of these servants, they wouldn't get at it. They're huge, lumbering, like massive, impressive champions. And they're like, all right, well, we got to clear this out really quick. I'm gonna cast Fireball.
No.
She passes the save without even having it, because she has like a plus 13 to her dex saving throws, and then she is resistant to fire damage. So out of like this 30, she took like 7 points of damage. And they try to fight her, and she just like, she has, I remember which one it is. It's the one of like Rot and Decay, I believe, some demon princess or prince of Rot and Decay. And she has 3 hits, and they do like 4d8 physical damage and 4d8 poison damage each hit, and there's a chance that it like paralyzes you and stuff like that. So she's just like rocking through, just rock'em sock'em robot. She gets to one of them, bam, 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 down. Goes to the next one, bam, 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 down. And then she has legendary actions. So every time somebody else goes, I'm like, I tried to warn you guys. There were so many. It was so clear that this was not a winnable fight, and you guys did this anyway. And the book actually says she will destroy this particular demon prince is busy doing whatever they want. They will not attack unless you do something like one of 2 things. One is like, I think if you kill some of her servants, she will eventually attack. She won't just let you kill her servants. The second one is because she's having her like bridal veil crafted or something like that. If you damage the bridal veil, which I'm like, Fireball's definitely gonna damage the bridal veil. But no, that it was fun and also sad at the same time, because we were like maybe 45 minutes into the session. I'm like, well, this is gonna be a short one tonight.
Oh man.
Wow.
Oh, that's rough. I've literally just had a message from the player that shot my character, which says, I stand by my choice to shoot. So, thanks for that. Thanks for that, General Fufu. Git.
Oh gosh.
Amazing.
I love it. I love it.
The person who asked the question, I think, wants me to tell the story of the... Well, okay, so I've killed 2 player characters at this point. The second one was intentional. We had a player leaving the campaign, and so he decided that he would like his character to die, and so we did a thing. But the first one was in a one-shot that I recorded last... like fall winter for a collaboration. A whole bunch of podcasts got together, and like all of the DMs played in games run by one another. And so it was just a one shot. So I guess people were sort of playing fast and loose with their characters, no emotional attachment. And we got to the big fight at the end, and they were fighting against 3 basically other player characters, right? Like humans, but with lots of class levels, and 2 of them had animal companions, and it was a really bananas fight. But the player just sort of had their character run in and could not handle it, and I was mortified because I'd never killed a player character before and didn't really want it to be happening. And meanwhile the player is like, no, do it, cut my head off, and I was like, I was just gonna have the bad guy stab you, but okay, I guess. And then there were 5 minutes of head jokes and stuff, and I was just completely destroyed because I didn't want to kill a player character.
Oh.
Oh man.
But it was just a one shot, so no emotional attachment apparently, I guess. I don't know.
A little bit.
Well, if we're going on one shots, the only player character death that I've had to deal with was my own, and it was actually written into the story. A couple of my friends were doing an ongoing campaign, and one of the players, who's one of my really good friends, asked me to join in for, to fill in for a character that did not show up and wasn't going to be there for a couple weeks. So I'm like, sure, why not? Unbeknownst to her, I got with the DM, who's another friend of mine, and I'm like, let's write a story, and let's not center it around me, but let's kind of center it around me a little bit. So what we did was we created a story where the player characters were going to look for information on the main bad guy that they were looking for, because this DM always loves to put humans as his main bad guy. And they found me in a tavern, come and, find this guy, get information, go find the bad guy. I joined them, and they, knew that I had kind of this area of mystique around me, but they did not know why. And it took my friend's character to get with me on a night watch and was pressing me, what's wrong with you? What's going on? What's in your past? And come to find out that my character, the big bad guy, whose name escapes me, I think it was I can't even remember his name now, but he essentially killed my character's daughter. My character's name was Axel Rain. He killed my character's daughter, and I'm going with them because where they're trying to find him, keep him alive, I'm going to kill this guy. And we do this 2-week thing, and all of these players think that I'm going to be staying with them for the next, through this entire campaign. But when we got to the end battle, I had this dagger, and I'm like, and this is my character's only weapon, and it's the dagger that the bad guy left in my daughter's back. And I'm like, I'm gonna kill him with this weapon, and it's going to be it's my life's goal. So we get to the big battle, we have the fight, and I'm like, okay, and this is about an hour-long fight, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go, and my character's a rogue, so I'm like, I'm gonna go for a strike with the dagger, and I hit a natural 20, and did max damage with it, and it ended up being the, how do you want to do this moment, and I scream my daughter's name as I'm doing this, and I'm like, you took this away from me, and I'm gonna get you. Well, cut to the next day, we go to the tavern, rent rooms and whatever. Cut to the next morning, everybody's awake, and it's like, all right, let's go find Axel. Turns out Axel's dead from a heart attack in the room. He's done what he's set out to do, and he has nothing left to live for. So he's done.
No.
It made my best friend cry, which is almost what I wanted to happen.
I'm not surprised. That's brutal. I love it.
And I both put our hands to our hearts at the same moment.
I approve. It's brilliant piece of storytelling. But my God.
The DM sent me his notes, and he called it Rain Family Values, and I'm like, this is perfect. This is exactly how I want this to go.
That is amazing. Oh, that's dark, but I love it.
That's really good.
That's fantastic. What about you, Luna? Have you got any appallingly good ones?
Well, appallingly good is I guess subjective, but I have only ever I don't DM. That will be changing this year. That's one of my goals for 2021.
Yay!
But I was playing a game years ago, and regulars of our show have heard me tell this story. My ex-husband was the DM, and it was the only time I've ever had a character die. I was playing a centaur, and we were in the middle of some crypt somewhere. I don't remember the whole story, but I do remember that it was very entertaining because I was a centaur, and there was a lot of stairs in here. I had to roll to go up and down the stairs every time. So that was really funny. But we walk into this room, and I should also preface this by saying that I was a fairly new D&D player at the time, and so we all walk into the room, and everybody's like, "Oh, I search this, I search that, I do the other thing," and I'm like, sarcophagus in the room, blinders on, and so I run over there, being the only person in the party strong enough to open it. So I push open the sarcophagus, out pops a vampire who immediately casts Slay Living, and I'm dead. And I jokingly tell people now that was part of the divorce paperwork, but no, it wasn't really. But it was.
It's understandable, really.
Looking back on it now, it was really funny, and my reaction to it was like super over the top, especially for people who know me as being like this very, like, I don't want to say quiet, but like this mild-mannered person. I like rage quit. I almost rage quit D&D at that point. I was like flip the table mad. So yeah, that was a little interesting.
That's amazing.
But yeah, that was my big character death. I've had a lot of NPC deaths that have like deeply affected characters and that sort of thing, but that, was not what was asked. So that we'll save for another time. So Roll for Chaos, who is in chat, also known as La Evenstar by some of us, had a good question, and I'm jumping over some that have come in first because he used our Ask My Question Next with channel points. So I'm going to jump to his, and then we will go back to some of the other ones that have come in. So his question was, what was the most emotional scene you can remember taking part in as a GM or a player?
I think you just heard mine.
Yeah, right?
Literally just heard mine.
That was a good one. That was a twofer. That's a good one.
Yeah.
C, answer A.
Yeah.
Basically. Oh, blimey. I'm trying to think if there have been any others.
I think if I had one pop in my mind, it's from the podcast, and I believe we had like a starter adventure that we did, and then because on our podcast we kind of switched out. We switched DMs, so everybody gets a chance to kind of play, and then nobody gets kind of locked into being a DM because that can be a lot of pressure. So we did mine, and then a person that's no longer with the podcast, his name is Josh. It was his adventure, and in his adventure, I don't know if he planned it that way or if he was planning to leave. This was his exit point, but he kind of offed his own character or had it hanging. So part of the adventure was trying to save him. And it was all down to the rolls. He had nothing planned, but he rolled to whatever we were trying to do. We had to get some like magical fruit to make a potion to like bring him back. And we rolled too low, and I guess the fruit got damaged in the trek back to this like village. And it was kind of a sad moment because I think he told us before we shot that, or before we recorded this one where we were going to find out if he lives or dies, that he was going to be on the podcast, and he didn't. Just wouldn't allow for it. It was too much stress. So it was kind of emotional that way because I didn't know him before the podcast. We've been spending a couple of months like talking and doing all this stuff together. So we became pretty good friends. And then his character died and he's going away. But he had like 2 more episodes, and somehow I can't remember exactly how, but through some dice rolls, we were able to finally bring him back by, I think I don't want to do any spoilers, but there's some way that we were able to kind of like bring him back. And then I was like, oh, he's back. But then he's like, I'm going to stay on the island. You guys have to leave. It's like, oh, Josh is still leaving. This sucks. So I think that one was really emotional for me just because, it kind of felt, a friend that I was talking to almost every day for like a couple of months is no longer going to be we still talk occasionally, but we don't have that kind of like forced interaction of doing something creative together. So it sucked on like 2 different levels.
That was sad as a listener too.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think in terms of just the biggest, almost sort of visual and physical reaction would have to be for me, like I said, but my paladin nearly died, and everyone else, I thought she had died, you know. I said we'd figured out this plan, we'd got ourselves into a bad corner, and there was a puzzle on a door that we needed to solve to get out. My character was the tank, she's not particularly clever, so it's like, right, I'll hold off this massive horde of rats, you guys go and unlock the door, and then peg it through, and I'll come after you, and we'll be fine. I'll hold them off until you can get it through. And it, unfortunately, it just didn't quite work, and I was basically ended up being sort of overwhelmed, and my hit points were coming down and down and down. And I think by the end of it, I had like 2 hit points left. So I said to my DM, look, can we just have 2 seconds in a private chat? And he was like, yeah, come on then. Sweetheart, I was like, there is no way I can make it 90 feet across the room in my turn. They're surrounding me, I've got 2 hit points left. Can we just make me go out on a bang? And he was like, yeah, we can at least do that. So I sort of got myself together a bit and went back into the main chat, and amongst all the sort of the normal size humanoid rats, there were 2 sort of like gigantic ones with almost like tanks or barrels of alchemists, like green alchemists fire on their backs that they were then sort of using to like hose out of their arms, like pipes on their arms or something weird like that, and it was really awful and horrible. So my character just turned to the others, did a very much sort of fly you fools kind of where it's like, go, it's okay, tipped him a wink, and then just launched an overarm with her greatsword straight into one of these tanks to blow them all to hell, including herself. And we were just sat there, my DM finished describing the scene, and we were just sat there like, nope, and just absolutely broke, completely sobbing our eyes out. The DN's girlfriend is one of our players as well, and he was playing downstairs, she was playing upstairs in their house, and I've watched her crying, get up out of her chair, walk out of her room, and I've heard her from his screen coming down the stairs, walk into his study, and just lamp him one in the shoulder. How could you do that? And she's crying, I'm crying, it was so funny, but it was so emotional. So my first player death as well, and it really got to all of us. I was crying for hours. And it's strange how invested you can get in a character as well, I think, to have that kind of response as well. But I do think that's D&D done right, when you can get to that level of having that kind of response with your storytelling, I think is really great.
Yeah.
But
RF Chaos again mentioned in chat, he said, we RP for months or even years at a time. The level of emotional connection and engagement that can be developed between players can be really big. Mirrors the cast works on big movie for years and has to say goodbye feeling. It's always sad or hard. So
Perfectly well said.
yeah, it's so
definitely.
true.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's the reason why that's the power of storytelling.
Yeah.
That's why we love this hobby. That's why collaborative storytelling is so powerful. I mean, there's been some really powerful emotional moments that I've had even just in one-shots, because if you are all working together and telling a good story together, then you could still have a very powerful emotional experience. We had one in last year. We did a few different recordings of something that we called Plot Hooks Adventures, which was you were in Luna in the third one.
Yep.
This was a moment in the second one, so it is actually recorded. I think it's in the second part of that 4-part escapade. But one of the characters who was actually a guest character from our Patreon, Andrew, he played a character who was a paladin of Soon, who in Dungeons and Dragons is sort of analogous to the goddess of beauty, and he wore a veil over his head at all times. And essentially, it came to the point in the story where he was interacting with a Holyphant in the town that they were in, and they were supposed to be offering something in order to aid in a ritual, and he offered his story. He offered kind of what he could, his memories, his experience, and took off his veil and showed how he was a deformed character with a hunchback that was, what, in his opinion, as his character does not think he was very beautiful. And yet, what we were able to have was we were able to have a very poignant conversation from this holy fund, which is from the same celestial plane as Soon lives on, and we were actually able to have a conversation about the true nature of beauty, and about how it's something that's on the inside and not on the outside, and actually work that just into the narrative of a one shot. And it was such an incredibly powerful moment, and just from a character, a person that I had never played with before that evening. And that's just the power of working together and telling great stories together, is we were able to have an emotional moment which not only had a meaning for the character and really, really meant a lot for that particular story, but also just was able to mean so much in terms of real world interactions and inspirations in that regard.
I love it when you can get, sort of, like you said, a nice conversation about sort of a more abstract concept out of it as well, and you find that the roleplay takes on a life of its own, and you just suddenly you realize you've been talking for ages and really getting into it. And I think that's some of the best moments in D&D for me, are those moments where your players or yourself are just so into that conversation, so involved with it, you forget that you're role playing. You're just, it's almost as if you're having that conversation for yourselves in real life, and I think that's fantastic. That's really awesome.
We've had a few arguments like that on Nature Check, the campaign that I DM. So again, the players are all professional scientists of one kind or another, but most of them are not playing a character who is a professional scientist, right? So they are playing characters who are, more or less worldly, and there have been multiple arguments between the sort of, more down to earth or I guess you could say blue collar player characters, and the wizard who did come from academia, right? And because he's super condescending. And so, yeah, that there have been a few arguments where I'm just like sitting back on stream, like letting them do their thing. But like my social anxiety is like, oh gosh, I hate this. Like, I know that they're best friends and like they don't mean it, but like, wow, it's awkward.
Oh, yeah. That social anxiety in role-playing it can be really hard, actually, I think. You do have to remind yourself, no, they don't hate me. They're shouting at my character, not at me. It's fine.
There was a campaign that I was playing at one point where I played a character, which also this is going to lead into my answer to the question. So my character was basically a pissed off werewolf, and she was just mad at the world, like didn't want to be there, didn't understand why she was part of this group. And so like there was a couple of times that I had to pull someone aside and be like, I'm not really mad at you. Like, I swear to God, this is just me like being in character. But it was a great way to play that character because it was always like, RF Chaos was in that stream. Claudia was complicated in quotes. She was complicated, and she caused a lot of trouble, but it was a great character to play like on a Monday after you get home from work and it's been a really crappy day, because it was such a great outlet to like, I'm just gonna channel all of my frustration into this character. But she was also the one that led to one of my most emotional moments that actually didn't happen. It was part of the campaign, but it didn't happen on stream. It was a streamed show, but I had decided that I needed to walk away from the stream because I was getting burnt out. I was involved in too much at the time, and I needed to take a step back. And it was really sad because I wanted to keep playing it. I loved the group. It was a fantastic group of people to play with. I just had put myself into too much, and so her way of leaving was really, really gut-wrenching for me because it was done completely in character. We had a off to the side, we had like a little RP room that we could like, act out stuff for the characters outside of the stream. And so the way that she said goodbye to the group, one of the characters' weapons had been damaged and was no longer functioning. And so she basically wrote a note, went into the bedroom while everybody was sleeping, went into the bedroom of this character, left her, I think she had a Glock, left her Glock with a note that just said, hope this will tie you over until you can find something new. And she grabbed her bag and she left. And that was it. And it was like, I was like in tears as I wrote it, and it was really, really hard. But for her, that's exactly how she would have gone. So it was really devastating.
Oh. I think that's a really great way to go, though.
Yeah.
That's a really great way to have gone, because you leave yourself potential to, if you ever felt like you wanted to, if the game was still viable, you could bring that character back.
Yeah.
That is a good way to go. If you're gonna go and you don't want to kill somebody off, that's a really great way of doing it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think she very easily could have gotten herself killed off. It was basically she was a werewolf running around with a changeling and a whole bunch of vampires and half vampires.
As one does.
Yeah, because that's what happens. But yeah, she just was somebody who was willing to pick a fight with anybody and everybody, and yeah, she was as RFK said, she was complicated. All right, so let's see. Did everybody get to answer that one that had an answer or wanted to answer?
Thanks.
All right. So let's go back. Scry Society had a question. Let's see. If you could play D&D with any other person in the world, living or dead, who would it be?
Oh, I've got an answer for this.
Go for it.
Stephen Colbert.
Stephen
Colbert, a legendary, one of the original D&D players. I would watching his episode of The Late Show where he just talked to Joe Manganiello the entire time about D&D was phenomenal, and then the little one shot he did for Red Nose Day with Matt Mercer.
Yeah.
I want to play. I would gladly play D&D with him. Plus, he'd also add a little bit of comedy to it.
Oh,
I
totally.
think that's a solid choice.
Stephen Colbert.
It's a thinker.
I think I'd go for Terry Pratchett. Personally.
Oh.
Really good. Really good.
I think he would just make a fantastic character that would be, or even if he played one that he's, one of the characters he's written, like I would, watching someone like Pratchett play Sam Vimes, bringing Vimes to life. Just, Terry Pratchett without question. That's who I'd play D&D with if I could. Hands down.
And so many.
It'd be hard to go wrong from wrong with Mel Blanc just for the sheer versatility.
Oh, the voice.
Yes.
Oh, that'd be so good.
The amount of characters that he could throw in there.
You know who I would want to play with just for the comedic value? Speaking of people named Mel Brooks.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Ooh.
That would be amazing. Robin Williams.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Robin
that was said in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like if it's living or dead, you got to pull a big one out of the hat. So maybe like Abraham Lincoln, just blow his mind.
Oh,
just
yeah.
like Abraham Lincoln, he loved plays, I guess. So maybe he was into theater, and then you see what he's got. 7 years ago, I rolled a natural 20.
It's fine until his character gets killed off by a gunslinger.
Oh no!
Too soon.
If we're going living or dead, how about like two of the greatest storytellers of all time? You got either William Shakespeare. I'd love to have DM me. Or if I want to go for like an evil campaign, Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe would make an amazing dark story.
I feel like William Shakespeare would be very confusing because he'd just be making up words, and all of a sudden everybody at the table just starts using them.
Very good point.
We'd have a whole new edition of D&D by the time the game was over.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah,
By
you
the
couldn't
time
play
his
with something like
villain monologue was over, like half the table's asleep.
Yeah.
you couldn't play with George R.R. Martin because he would just TPK your party within the first half an hour.
Yeah.
No,
Absolutely.
the thing is, if he was a DM, he would never finish it. It would just
No.
he'd be like, I'm still working on the campaign, guys.
Yeah,
Next week.
you couldn't play with Tolkien either because he would just spend the entire 4-hour session describing the scene to you.
Yeah, somebody
This
said that in
elf
chat. You
hair.
thought Token, though, you would get 20 hours of elf history.
And the rest of it is all travel between locations.
Yeah. You'd
That's
say that your character
unfortunately
speaks
a lot
Elvish,
like
and he'd ask,
me.
well, which dialect are you using? And he'd expect you to know.
Right.
And if you don't know, he was going to write you one.
Out of the room. You can't speak. You can't.
If you can't speak
don't know
Sindarin, get out.
You can't just say that you speak it. You have to actually roleplay speaking it
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
Okay. I have another answer for this. Hideo Kojima. I would love Hideo Kojima to write a D&D story for me.
I would like to see the end result, but I would hate to be in it.
Oh my gosh.
Why are we carrying ladders again, DM? It'll make sense at the end, I swear.
Oh gosh.
We have to go through 4 different campaigns, and then at the 5th one, I'm just gonna mess everything up again.
Chat's going, GRRM. I'm sorry, we have to reschedule again. I know you're all excited for the BBEG fight. Next month? That's the 6th time, George.
Exactly.
A Kojima campaign would be so confusing. Yes, it would.
Oh, that sounds about right. That sounds absolutely right.
Have a
Neil
weird
Gaiman would be
answer.
another one.
Yep.
Oh, Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, no, that'd be a really good one.
He'd be a really good choice. Or Patrick Rothfuss.
He goes
He
to
actually
cons.
plays too.
Yeah, he's been at PAX East a few times.
He's in Acquisitions Incorporated, I believe.
I think
I don't know
so,
if he
yeah.
still is. He was.
Oh yeah, someone said M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah.
Oh!
They'd always end disappointing, though.
Stan Lee! Patch from Patch. Stan Lee.
Oh, there you go.
First 2 adventures would be fun, and then like his 3rd and 4th would be like, and then the 5th one would just be really bad. And then
Like Stephen King if you want a horror-based one.
Oh. Could you imagine, could you
Gunslinger.
imagine him running like a Call of Cthulhu or a...
Yes. Yes, I could. That would be amazing.
He lives in the state right next to mine, just, saying. Oh, man, there's so many people. Like, now that the wheels are turning, I'm like, but what about this person? But what about this person?
This is
Yeah.
one of those questions that we're gonna think of like the best answers once this stream is over.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know who
Wes
just...
It depends
Anderson.
on what you're going for too.
Yeah.
Oh, Wes Anderson is a good choice.
Wes Anderson is a
Miller.
good one.
Wes
If you're
Anderson is a
going
really
back
good
to
choice.
comic
So what we
books.
need to do is we need to just come up with a list, and then we're going to clip this, and we're going to post it on Twitter and tag them all.
Yes, please.
If any of you...
So
Yeah.
I have a weird answer because I'm not really big into like celebrity and stuff. So my weird answer is I haven't met them yet, because one of the cool things about the way we run Nature Check is many of our storylines are sort of like science or like environmental themed in some way. And so I've brought on a bunch of guest professional scientists who happen to be experts in whatever it is we're doing. So like our very first guest was a mosquito researcher, and we did a plot line that had to do with sturges, right? Monstrous big mosquito type creatures.
Oh, wow.
And we've had a mycologist, so someone who studies fungi, come on and play a myconid and stuff like that, right? So what's cool about that though is I find these scientists on Twitter and I'm like, would you like to be on my show? And so many of them have never played D&D before, ever, right? And so their first time playing it is live on our show. And I have been so incredibly impressed with these people and picking up the game for the first time, and how much they lean into their character and how much they lean into the game. My favorite has to be Emily Nonaker, or I forget if that's how I pronounce her name. Anyway, she came on, she's a hyena researcher, and she played a gnoll, and wow, she just blew it out of the water, and she'd never played any TTRPG ever. And so I think like that's what gets me excited, is thinking about playing with people who maybe have never played before, or like not necessarily a celebrity, but just somebody who's really gonna like lean into like making the game amazing for everybody else at the table. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is
Yeah,
really
I have
cool.
one of my best friends is a archaeologist. He's been on the podcast a few times. He does research on Mayan culture down in southern Mexico, and we his first real campaign was with us playing like a College of Lore bard whose passion was essentially, recovering the past, and that was just brilliant to see his perspectives on all those different things.
Amazing.
Awesome.
I love that. Yeah.
It's great if you can build a character that has sort of interests that you are knowledgeable about as well. Like I like playing characters who are quite bookish, and like to study. I really enjoy that. I love the fact that you've had so many different people on your show that are experts in their field who have just taken that and run with it. That's fantastic. That's really, really clever as a concept as well.
Yeah, definitely. To that point, I always end up making characters that are way smarter than I think I am.
Aww.
And that's always a problem, because I'd be like, my character would know this. Me, on the other hand, I can't figure this out to save my life.
We were just talking about this in home game the other day. It's so hard to RP the charisma, wisdom, and intelligence if your character is way better at one of those things than you are. And also, if it's really, really low, those can be hard. You don't have to prove whether or not you're as strong or as dexy as your character.
Right. I need to stop giving my characters high intelligence. I need to not play high intelligence characters at all.
Although, to be fair, if my DM ever says to me, well, to prove that you can do this, I want you to push a stone door open, it's never going to happen. I'm stuck. Absolutely ruined. No
I'd
chance.
like you to save against this poison.
Yeah.
Can you run 60 feet in that direction without getting winded?
Nope.
I mean, wheelchair, yes. On my own steam, no.
Oh, gosh. All right. Let's see. This is a great question, and this should lead us right into our break, so we'll dive into this one. Orchrist86 would like to know, what RPG have you picked up solely for the cover art? Ryan, I was immediately looking at you when I saw this question come in.
If you can't tell, there's just a slight peek of my bookcase. I've picked up a lot of things based upon cover art. 1 second.
Oh, he's finding something. I was tagged in this on Twitter because, again, it's got nature-related stuff to it, but the Wagadu Chronicles supplement for 5e.
Oh, good!
It's not its own separate TTRPG, but it's a supplement for 5e, and it's its own world and some different mechanics and different playable races / species, and oh my gosh, the art, amazing.
Beautiful.
The gameplay and the world and the culture, amazing. We had the creator of the game on to run a one-shot for us on our stream, and it was just so cool. Loved it. Everything about it.
So the one I picked, I've got this. The art is just so cool. I found it in a bin. I found it in a bin for $5. I have no idea if it's rare or not, but it is The World of Androids by Fantasy Flight. I've looked into it a little bit. I don't get it at all, but the cover is so cool.
It's like the Silver Surfer.
I know, it is what it looks like.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I picked this up at a small con a couple of years ago. The White Queen, which is I love the cover. I don't know if you can see it very well. Yeah, you can't see it. It is a skull with a crown on it, and that's by Andy Diggle and Phil Welch. And this was actually something that they wrote as a charity piece, and all the proceeds from the sales of these went to a UK charity that focuses on OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder.
Oh.
But it's really fantastic. It's just, it's not a system. It's designed to be, it's a supplement for 5e. But I was looking through it and just absolutely fell in love with it. And it's just really, really well written and a really fun thing to, I haven't had a chance to play it yet. And I can't talk too much about it because I know full well that at least one of my players is watching this, so I can't give too much away because at some point I'm dropping it in there for them. But I absolutely fell in love with it, and I just thought that, considering it was being done for charity, it's so well made. I really loved it. But I do need to pick up some more. Banquet of the Damned has really good artwork that sort of caught my interest as well. That's another one I bought a couple of years ago that I thought was really cool. grotesque, but really cool.
Well, I don't have any of the books in here in my studio room. They're actually in another room. But I can say that probably my favorite that I've gotten from just cover art is a game called Misspent Youth by Robert Bowl. He absolutely loves when I shout him out. But that game, I saw that come up on Twitter one day, and I'm like, oh, this very much looks interesting, and saw all of the art both inside the game and the cover art, and I'm like, okay. Just the black and white and red art style, I'm like, ooh, this looks good. And it's one of my favorite TTRPGs of all time. So yeah, just from the cover art, that one is just really good.
I mean, I think this is a bit big-headed, but I think if I hadn't been part of the writing team for Disaster Hamsters, I would have bought that one in a heartbeat anyway, because I do think the artwork that we got done for Disaster Hamsters was just fantastic. The artwork
on that.
The artwork was done so quickly. I mean, I think it was almost finished before we'd finished, half the writing. Most of the artwork was done, and I fell in love with it. When we saw sort of the original pieces, we were just like, yes, this is great. So I have to say, I am very biased, but honestly, if I hadn't have been one of the writers on that, I would have bought it anyway, because I think it looks fantastic. And the cover's really cute.
I heard the maps are pretty darn awesome too, but
The maps are amazing.
Yeah, Nick did a great
such
job.
a great job on those. They came out so well, and they come out really well printed as well. I started to run Disaster Hamsters for a couple of friends of mine, and I just printed everything out, and they came out so nicely, and they were so accessible to use.
Good.
They did a really good job. Yeah, Nick did a fantastic job on the maps. They came out so well.
He's not even here in chat anymore for us to be able to flatter him. He's already had to take
Oh,
off. But...
Well, he flattered himself. I saw that earlier.
Yeah.
He said I heard the person who did the maps was very handsome.
Yes.
That's what he said.
Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah.
It's fine. We'll clip it and send it to him.
Yeah, totally. I don't know that there's been any that I've picked up solely because of the art, but I've lucked out with a lot of them that have great art. Anything from UO Publishing has great art. Disaster Hamsters has great art. Roll for Chaos is here with he wrote Aether and Steamworks, which is an amazing system, and the art in that is phenomenal. He's just an amazing artist. So that's a good one. There's a lot of really amazing artists out there.
And I do think the art plays such an important part as well, especially if you're using it if you're using things as guides and visual aids for the game. I think it makes such a big difference to have good art. It makes you want to play it as well as especially if you're DMing, because it can sometimes feel a bit much sometimes. But if you've got those nice images, that nice artwork to sort of kick your brain up a gear, it stops you from feeling so laggy, because you're like, no, you can see it a little bit clearer, and I think it makes you a bit of a better DM to be able to take that image and describe it a bit. If you've got a good image to work from, it's easier to bring it alive for your players, I think.
That's true, yeah.
I think it does make a huge difference.
It gives me, at least this may just be because I'm visual, but being able to see rather than just read, like if I just have like a paragraph that just tells me that this setting is steampunk and gives some things about it, instead of just this full-age art spread that shows all this amazing steampunk detail, I get much more from the art spread, because that puts my mind in where the story is supposed to be, rather than just reading a piece that says, oh, okay, all right, goggles and steam and trains, and okay, all right, that the art actually helps engage me in the narrative rather than just the words on the page.
Yeah, I think that was something that was kind of like put in from the beginning, because I collect old AD&D books. And the funny thing is, like, the first monster manual, every single monster, except for the gelatinous cube, which is weird, has a piece of art for it. And then I was reading into that a little bit. It's because none of this stuff was represented. A lot of this stuff was never represented before. So if a DM has to describe it, they need something to describe it from. So like orcs, I think D&D was one of the first things to really describe orcs and put it as a picture, not just some words on paper. So it's super important, I think, or just to give, especially when you're first starting out, to like have some kind of visual reference. Otherwise, you're just kind of floating in the darkness.
All right. Well, I think we're at a good place to take a quick pause. We'll take a quick break. We will, as chat is known to say, hashtag free the pea or hashtag free the water elemental. And we will be back in a few minutes after our guests have had a chance to refresh drinks and stretch legs and all of that good stuff. So we will see you. We will see you shortly. And we're back. Thank you all for sticking around during the break. As you can see, as promised, this is my kitty Molly. She doesn't want to look up at the screen, but if you follow me on Instagram, you've seen her on there as Gamer Cat Molly. And yeah, she likes to hang out with me sometimes and walk, like she's doing now, walk around on my desk while I'm streaming, and then I can't see my monitor, and it's all that good stuff. So, you know.
To ask a question.
I know.
It was cat shelf here a minute ago.
Yeah. It was. A bunch
During
of us
the
had
break.
our cats. Unfortunately, that didn't last very long. All right, we are going to dive right back into some of our questions. So the next one comes from Freighter Chaos, and the question is, whoops, my cat just walked on my screen and changed everybody's cameras around.
Oh, that is the face of no regrets as well.
Right? She's like, don't care. I'm going to just put her down so she can go do it.
That's very much that's your problem, Mum.
Yeah, pretty much.
Deal with it.
Okay, so the question for all, but especially for Holly. What is a good way to include disability representation into the lore? We have the Idle Champions character Talon Uren, but obviously in a fantasy setting, people are going to get injured. How is a good way to go about showing this in-game while keeping good representation?
There's a question. And, I mean, it's a question that I can't answer super easily. There is a lot of nuance that needs to be involved. There is a lot of discussion that needs to be involved as well. I think if you want to play a disabled character, I think everyone should absolutely have a go at it. But I think if you are not someone who has had any experience of being disabled or knowing a disabled person, research is really important. And I think you need to work really closely with your DM on how you're going to do it. It also depends on what kind of disability you're looking to portray. A really good example is a game I played in a couple of years ago. One of the characters was a tabaxi monk who had his vocal cords damaged in his backstory, so he couldn't speak at all. And originally he was like, well, I'm just going to take loads of points out of my charisma and make charisma my dump stat because he can't communicate. It's like, but why can't he communicate? He still can communicate. He has hands, a paws, we can make this work. And the more we talked about it, we developed it a little bit, and we realized that actually, sign language absolutely should be a thing in a D&D world. And that's how we got around it, and we made it so that the character that I had took the linguist feat, so she could go and learn how to communicate with this character in sign language, and then translate it back to the others. And suddenly we had that really close connection between characters that wasn't just based on him having to write notes and be like, all the time. It was actually proper RP conversation, and it works really well. I do think that, especially at the moment, disability in TTRPGs has been a really hot issue lately. It's been a really huge thing. Samuel very kindly had me on the Plot Hooks podcast a couple of months ago, where we talked about that there as well. And if you can, go have a listen. It's episode 50, I think it was, on Plot Hooks that we did, where we talked about disability in TTRPGs. Looking at it respectfully, I think, is the best advice I can give. And working with your DM to make sure that it's sensible, because a lot of the features, like if your character is blinded by a spell, it is not the same as a character who has been blind for years, or who is disabled by their blindness, who's been born blind. The temporary effects of blindness are going to completely mess up your character. But a character who has been blind for years shouldn't be suffering the same negative effects that someone who's been temporarily blinded would. The person who has been blind for years, who has experienced that for a long time, is going to have adapted and developed other skills to compensate for that. Whereas a character who is blind for maybe 24 hours due to a spell effect is going to be all over the place. And I think that's where a lot of it gets confused, is that you look through the book, you go, well, there's the blind condition, and it's going to cause this damage, this kind of effect. That's how I'll play my character who's been blind since birth. And that's not how it works. I can understand why people go that way because it's in the book and it's mentioned as blind, and that's what makes sense to do. But if you actually met someone who's blind, that is not how blind people interact with the world, for the most part. Same with the other conditions like deafness or being paralyzed. Temporary effects, temporary conditions are not going to be the same as a long-standing disability. They're also not going to be the same as a newly acquired disability. Something that my DM and I have been talking about for a little while is considering my character becoming disabled in a wheelchair at some point. I myself am in a wheelchair a lot of the time. I'm what's called an ambulatory wheelchair user, so I can walk, but I find it a lot easier to use a wheelchair in real life. So we've talked about incorporating that. But that character is still going to be very new to the disability, so she's not going to have the immediate sort of straight away she can still do all the things that the combat wheelchair that Mustangs aren't made. She's not going to have access to all of that straight away because she's still going to be learning how to develop that and how to use that. But she won't have all the penalties that a paralyzed condition will give, because this is something that she's going to learn to live with and adapt to over the time. So it's very much that separation of conditions versus actual disability, I think is a really key thing there, and just communicating that with your DM and finding a way to really put that across in a sensible way. And definitely talk to people. There are lots of us out here. There are lots of disabled people in the TTRPG community, and we are happy to answer questions. We're happy to have those conversations and talk to you about it. As long as you're respectful and polite and you genuinely want to learn from a place of understanding, we don't have a problem talking to you about it. It's never an issue. We'd much rather you guys portray something like that in a respectful and sensitive way than just going, I think this works, and potentially upsetting or offending somebody else, because you never know what people are going through behind closed doors or what might be in their own histories. Someone might have a family member who's going through something or who's been blind their whole lives, and you don't want to put yourself in a position where you've offended that person by taking the wrong approach to it, if that makes sense. It's a difficult one, not gonna lie. It is a difficult one, and I think that's part of why it's been such a big part of the discourse lately. But I'm really glad that it's become part of the discourse. Because we are going to find that more people are becoming disabled. As with things like COVID and everything continue, it's going to happen, and it's great to see that more people are getting into that representation of disability in their games. And it's great to see that game makers are including disabled people. The most recent Candlekeep Mysteries features a fully accessible dungeon, which is amazing. It's fantastic to see something that's designed for people of all abilities, not just able-bodied people, but disabled people as well. So it's really good, and it's getting there. It's a long journey, but it's getting there. If that all makes sense.
I think that was great. Yeah,
I do too.
Absolutely.
Like I said, it's a hard one. It is a really hard one, and there are lots of other people besides me who will have better takes on this. But yeah, feel free to ask, feel free to DM, send us these questions, and we'll help however we can, because it's great when you want to learn and be inclusive, and it matters a lot. There you go.
There you go. Does anybody have anything they would like to add on? Because I know I certainly don't.
I think that was perfect.
I do too. Yeah, no, I think that was a great answer, and thank you so much for being willing to take that one on. So
more than welcome. It's a great question to ask. It's an important one to ask.
Yeah, it is definitely. Okay. So let's see. I have a whole bunch of questions still coming up. So, the next one is from General Fufu.
Oh no. Oh no.
We were talking about this one as we went to break, so we knew it was coming. And the question is, would you award XP for woodland critters caught in AoE spells, i.e. squirrels?
No.
Who wants to take this one?
Not me. Don't know what you're talking about. I'm having nothing to do with this.
I feel like it's a very pointed question at a particular individual, so I don't know.
Yeah. mhm.
It's fine. I'm just going to TPK his party next time I see him. For context, this is because where I said to you guys earlier, I've been streaming Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 on Twitch, and playing through a Baldur's Gate game, there were lots of squirrels running around, and you can interact with them by either talking to them and they just squeak at you, or you can attack them. And someone said, what happens if you attack one? I didn't want to attack the squirrel. I had no interest in attacking the squirrel. The squirrel did nothing to me. But they talked me into it, so I went and I killed a squirrel for 1 XP. They spent the rest of my stream talking about that squirrel's family, his wife and children, how were they going to get nuts to survive the winter and all the rest of it, and that's all I've had ever since.
It just came up in chat. He has a squirrel wife and children.
Great. So there you go. I mean, you know, the official Baldur's Gate Wizards of the Coast answer is you get 1 XP for killing a squirrel. But
There you go.
You know, other DMs may rule differently. I can't believe you did that.
The spirit of the squirrel haunts you.
It does. It clearly
Circles
does.
over your head.
Yeah. Every now and again, I smell hazelnuts.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I feel like it's legit.
It's tough work, but somebody's got to mine the squirrels for XP.
Right?
So.
The worst way to grind.
1 XP at a time.
It's honest work, though. It's honest work.
Yeah.
You know what I'd like to know? Any of you
I
who
feel
have
like-
DM'd, have you ever considered that when someone casts an AoE spell? Like, I cast Fireball in the middle of this giant cavern. Did you kill any rats or mice or anything in the process? Like...
Oh, that's a really good question. No, I certainly haven't considered that. Maybe I should.
I haven't.
I've never
Just
done XP-based leveling. I always do
Yeah.
milestone leveling, so I've never had to worry about it. So.
Do you know what? Actually, I think I did recently. I was doing a bit of playtesting with my friends, and they'd set up Leomund's tiny hut, but they'd been trapped inside it, and there were some ankegs attacking them, but they couldn't get into the hut, but they wanted to get rid of them because they set up their little Leomund's tiny hut on an ankeg mating ground. So basically what they did was they sent their Warforged out, who used something like Cloud Kill, or, you know, basically was like, I will go and fumigate. Went outside, cast an AoE, poison effect, and I went back inside the Leomund's tiny hut and let it just kill everything. And I was like, you watch as you watch through Leomund's tiny hut as the ankegs die, but birds fall from the sky with a thump. And little bodies litter the ground. Their kobold druid was really happy because it meant breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But
So sad.
it really was. I felt really cruel, but they started it, not me.
There was a minor spoiler for Dice Pop. I considered it once, I guess. A minor spoiler for Dice Popular. There was a point in my adventure, the one I was DMing, that a lot of commoner villagers died all at once.
Oh my god.
Like 70 to 80. And I remember after we finished up that day, I think somebody's like, well, do we get that XP? And I was like, you guys wouldn't, but I looked at the player that had accidentally killed all of these villagers, like, it's yours if you want it. You did kill them fair and square, so if you want, and I tagged him, I can't think it was an XP for a commoner is like 10. So you had 800 XP or something like that. I mean, it's not bad. Honest day's work, I guess, you know, accidentally killing villagers.
And it was an accident too. I will vouch for that.
Yeah. Commoner equals 10 squirrels. So
I feel less bad
So
about
you're
the
saying that
I
one
killed.
commoner
Seems about
equals
right.
10 squirrels in a trench coat. That's what you're telling us.
it could be. See, commoner. I'm
There's
gonna
an
look it
idea.
up.
Never
look
mind
it up right for a
kobolds.
second.
We're going with squirrels.
Yep, 10 XP, 10 XP. So a commoner, a humanoid life in 5e is worth, I guess, 10 Baldur's Gate squirrels.
Wait, the XP doesn't change with the level of the player character? It's just always 10?
It's always, if you kill a commoner,
Interesting.
it's 10.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh. All right.
I'm gonna TPK them all, I swear. I will have vengeance.
Okay. Let's see. We have a couple more. So Tina Riva would like to know, what are your favorite? I should specify this by saying that PressX, this question was originally geared just to you, and then opened up to the rest of us.
Of course. I know who this is. That's why.
I know. What are your favorite TTRPGs that are not D&D?
Oh, it's like I fed this question to her earlier. Okay, I'll open this up. I mentioned Misspent Youth by Robert Bowl. Fantastic for one-shots or for even a long campaign. Fiasco is fantastic. Chronicles of Ember by Alan Wortman was a great one that I got started on. And Worldwide Wrestling, I was head of creative for a year before we had to end that. And Cyberpunk 2020 I've played for a long time off and on, and I'm writing my own module for that, as we speak.
I have two. My first one, hands down, World of Wilderveer is amazing. It's so cute and fun. There isn't really like a combat mechanic, and characters don't have hit points because it's more about like exploration and storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
But like the gameplay makes you feel like you're in Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is just like everything you want for like a nice chill role-playing game session. So I love World of Wilderveer so much. And then the other one I had the opportunity to play in a one-shot on New Year's Eve this year. Thirsty Sword Lesbians was hilarious. Loved it so much.
Excellent.
It's D&D adjacent. I love Starfinder. Starfinder is so much fun. Because I love, I'm an engineer. I'm an aerospace engineer, so I love the space element, but I also love, the fantasy element. So I love that. Non D&D completely. I bought Cthulhu books. I have I can't remember what it's called, but I have a couple of the Call of Cthulhu books, and I desperately want to try and get a game together, either as a player, as a DM, or a game master, because I love the feel of it. I love the system. I think the system is really cool. I think it allows for a lot of really good role play and kind of adventuring and being able to do like random puzzles and stuff. It just seems like a lot of fun. So I would definitely put, even though I technically haven't played it yet, I would definitely put Call of Cthulhu up there as something aspirational, at least, that I really want to play, and I love it.
Yeah, Call of Cthulhu is absolutely mine. I've never played a campaign of it, but I did run a one-shot actually set in the Great Chicago Fire, where essentially it was it was not the cow that kicked over the lantern that caused the Great Chicago Fire in this particular instance. But yes, Call of Cthulhu is absolutely mine. It's just the kind of story that is really intriguing to me to tell. I love that kind of narrative.
Awesome. There's one that it's not actually out yet. It was recently funded, really well funded on Kickstarter. It's called Those Who Wander by Adam Hancock. Mm-hmm. And I'm super excited for that to come out. The tier that I supported at, I got to design an NPC to go in the book, so I'm super stoked to see how that all comes out, which is going to be amazing. But the whole system's going to be fantastic. If you don't know who Adam Hancock is, check out their work on the DMs Guild. They wrote the book An Elf and an Orc Had a Little Baby, which is all about making mixed race characters. Not just a half elf or a half orc, but actually looking at what traits and features you would get from each half, and you can make them from scratch, and it works really, really well. And it removes that bioessentialism of a half orc is going to have these specific features. Well, actually, it focuses more on their upbringing as well, and where they're raised. So you could have a half tiefling, half Asimar, for example, but who's been raised on one of the 9 planes of hell. So their upbringing is going to really sort of be in conflict with certain parts of the nature. It's really interesting, and Those Who Wander is sort of partly building off of that, and this idea of having characters who are more tailor-made to what you want, and it looks like it's going to be absolutely fantastic. It's still following that sort of 5e style, but it's, you know, taking enough of a step to the side that it's going to be really interesting and fresh for people to play, and I'm really excited for it to come out and to see how that's going to look at the table with my friends. I'm really excited for that one. Other than that, I tend to stick to D&D just because it's what I know. I do need to try more, though. Definitely want to try Call of Cthulhu at some point.
I like Savage Worlds is a great one. That's a really good system, especially if you like exploding dice systems. And let's see, Quest RPG, that's another really fun one. Actually, Ryan and I got to play that one together one time. That was a lot of fun. And it's just that's a really nice, simple system. It's great if you're getting someone into TTRPGs for the first time, you know, because it's a really basic D20. It's all you need. And, you know, much more around the storytelling than the dice rolls, which I think is a great way to get people into it, because it's always like the math and knowing your AC and your this and your that. You know, that's what I think always gets people screwed up, you know, when they're first getting started. I play Pathfinder First Edition every Wednesday, so I'm kind of biased and I lean towards that. So, yeah, those are some of my favorites. I'd like to try some other ones. Starfinder, Ryan, you mentioned that. That's on my list of things to try. Vampire the Masquerade, I'd love to try that.
Oh, yeah.
What else?
I gotta get my emo clothes from middle school if I'm gonna do that, though. My
What do you
hair
mean
is
from middle?
slicked in color.
From middle school, you don't still wear them? What's going on, dude?
No, not
You never lose
anymore.
those.
Oh wait, what's that book you have, Ryan? Tunnels and Trolls or something like that?
It's a box set, yes.
Yes!
Tunnels and Trolls. The easier version of original Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. Pull that one out someday. That would be entertaining, I'm sure. Yeah.
We also ran a stream of a Powered by the Apocalypse game for a hot minute on Nature Check, and the specific system was Legacy Life Among the Ruins, and I thought it was really interesting because that system is designed in such a way that you're telling a much longer term story. Like most of these game systems we've just described, your characters play out every day, or like you can do a time jump of a few months in D&D and just say that happened, right? But like in Legacy, there's actually like time jumps built into the game, and you wind up making new player characters with some regularity because of course your original player character ages out and eventually dies, right? Because you're going over decades or, 50 years, 100 years. And so the main character that each player is running is actually like a family, which isn't necessarily like a biological family. It could just be like a faction to take from certain video games and stuff. But yeah, that you're sort of running like the long-term story of this faction of people through the game, which I thought was really
cool.
fun.
That is really cool.
I played a really good one-shot of a game. It was like a 2 or 3 hour game called Dread.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, an RPG where instead of rolling dice, your like choices and situations are you have to take it's essentially you have to play Jenga. You have to take a block if you're going to be successful. If you're successful, you take a block and you put it there. But if you fail, your character usually fails so tremendously that it ends up in death. So like the one shot we played, it was essentially Friday the 13th, and we had to figure out how to beat Jason. And yeah, it did not end well for any of us.
Oh dear. That sounds pretty awesome though.
Yeah, it turns a TTRPG into a dexterity game. Not.
I'm out. I'm right out.
All right. Okay, well, we're gonna jump to the next question, and I have no idea which is the correct pronunciation of this person's name. It's either, I'm thinking it's either Digimois or Digimoy, because it's MOI at the end. So I'm like, it could be the French word. I don't really know. But they asked a really good question, and it's a little long, so bear with me. I am one quest into DMing my son's first solo adventure and realizing just how much I relied on others to track the dice and stats for me. We agreed not to worry too much about the details. Am I setting myself up for grief later?
I think it depends on what you
how
want.
long you're gonna go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it also depends on how you run the game. I guess if you're talking about like recording roles and stuff like that, if you're playing really rules light and you're not really, as long as the general consensus, like you've taken a lot of damage, you're probably hurt, or you did. I mean, if you're just tracking a story, it's not that bad. I mean, if you're having issues, because sometimes I have issues with that, like recording what happened in a story and then remembering it between, that one can be tough. Because it's a hard habit to build into, especially if you're the type of person that's like, oh, I have a good memory, but you really don't, because you forget that you have a bad memory.
Yeah.
But if you're having issues with that, one thing that I've done before is if you have the patience to listen to it again, to set up your phone on record.
Yep.
And that makes it really easy.
Yeah.
Because I think there's I know there's services do that, but I even think like a lot of iPhone and Android phones, they have like a built-in, like it translate your voice into words, so you can actually do word searches against it. If you're like, I don't remember what my son's character did, let me do a quick word search. So that could be one way.
Yeah, recording the audio of it was my suggestion as well, especially if you can stand to go back. I like to go back. One of the things I like about doing a streamed game is that I can go back and rewatch the VOD if I need to, or at least listen to it. Because then I can be like, what happened in the last, especially if we have a break between the times that we play. But if you're anything like me and you can't remember the week to week every time, it's good to go back and listen to it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you're playing with, with your little ones, with your kids, depending on that depends a little bit on their age. It's like, I know that there are people who played, friends of mine who play with their sort of slightly preteen, sort of 11 to 13-year-olds. And they do sort of start to push more into we're going to record this because it builds those sort of math skills and things. And it starts to, you're trying to encourage them to be a little bit more sort of independent with things like that. But if they're a little bit younger, like my nephew is 5 and he is obsessed with the idea of playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's all he wants to do. I have to phone him and tell him Dungeons and Dragons bedtime stories. And he's obsessed. And it's really sweet. And I love it. But he's determined to play Dungeons and Dragons, and my dad, his granddad, is like, we can play Dungeons and Dragons. And when my dad plays with him, it's very, very basic. They use sweets, I think, sometimes. It's like, right, you've got 10 gummy sweets. When all the gummy sweets are gone, and your character's too tired to carry on, sort of thing, and he'll mark it off in like gummy bears and things and silly things like that. So there are loads of ways that you can do it if you're playing with slightly younger children. But then, like you said, if you're moving into sort of older children who are sort of, getting into those teenage years or already gotten into those teenage years, I would say things like recording it are probably going to be an easier way to go. But there are loads of ways you can make it fun. I've seen grown adults who play with shots instead of things, There's so many ways you can play. Yeah. That's dangerous, though. I don't condone that.
We were talking about Quest earlier. Quest is great for that because Quest is very simple. You only have 10 hit points at any time. It goes down, it goes up, and I think you have action points or something like that. Where for your abilities,
points and
it's super easy to manage. You don't even need a huge sheet, and the rolls are always you have no modifiers either. So one is a automatic failure, something bad's happened to you, and then like 2 to I believe 9 is like it's a failure but it's not too bad. 10 to something is a success but it's not great, and then like it's really easy to track, and you don't have to keep track of distances either. It's like, oh, they're close, they're nearby, they're far away. I would look into Quest too. It just simplifies everything.
The other thing that's nice about Quest 2 is that it actually says, if you look right in the booklet, they're like, we don't care if you copy this and share it with other people. Like, we just want people to play. So it's great. That's another reason why I say it's great for beginners, because there's not a huge cost investment there. You know, if you know somebody who can send you the PDF copy of it, or, you know, you can access a copy of it from somebody who's willing to give you a copy or whatever, you know, you can, I always would say, like, if you could buy a copy, I encourage you to, especially because this is a really great system. And, you know, it's well worth the money that you will spend on it. But yeah, like Ryan said, it's great, especially for that kind of thing, because it would be really easy for especially a younger kid to understand.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things I know my friend has done for their child that they're playing with, they've been and bought they're a relatively new release by Wizards of the Coast. They're like scaled down handbooks.
Yeah.
Sort of, you've got one that's all the monsters, one that's all the different classes and things, and it just breaks it down into a more child accessible way, and that's been really great as well. Being able to sort of sit and look at those and explain it in more sort of basic terms has been really helpful, I've found as well. So there are loads of ways that you can, you know, scale it down to age appropriate or understanding appropriate level. There's so many things you can do to do it. But yeah.
Okay, they just said they're using an essentials kit right now, which yep.
Yeah, the essentials kit's a really good way to go, and you can still, you know, scale it back down. You can still say, okay, well, we're going to look at, you know, whatever level you're at, we'll have this many hit points rather than what you've rolled, and like I said, work it in tens or whatever and go from there, and just use your discretion, because no one wants to make their kid cry, but
Yeah.
no one wants to kill their kid's character off in the first go, but maybe you do, I don't know. I'm assuming
Depends on the kid, I guess.
We don't know you. Yeah.
One of the things that I did when I was introducing one of my best friends to D&D, because he's heard me talk about it at work for a year now, and he's like, all right, show me what this is. So I wrote just a small little adventure, but one thing that I did to kind of like introduce him to it a little bit was a DM that I watch and listen to a lot named Johnny Chiodini taught me that if you're going and somebody's doing a roll, don't give them a difficulty check. Just kind of keep it in the back of your mind, just in case, like if they roll a 14 and the difficulty check you think is a 15, you might be able to fluff it a little bit just to be able to either make him succeed or make him fail, but don't give him like a hard check. That's usually what I end up doing with somebody who's just getting into it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think as well, like, one of the things that sometimes frustrates me with D&D in particular is you could roll for something, but your think like insight, passive perception. You might roll for perception. Your passive perception might be a 15, but you roll really badly, and like, you don't see anything. It's like, yeah, but my innate perception is so much higher than that. Yeah. I think sometimes there are skills checks that you make, and they just screw you over as a player, because actually they should be so much higher. You know, I've got a strength of 20. I should be able to open a door. You know, I should be able to pull that trapdoor up without too much hassle. I especially for small, you know, if you're engaging with children, it's going to be really frustrating, because you're like, well, I've got a 20. Why I'm a strong character. Why wouldn't I be able to do this? Well, you rolled a 2, but I've got a 20 on my strength. It doesn't correlate. So I think that, you know, and I find that frustrating sometimes as an adult. So I think that's one of those things, like you said, you know, giving them those skill checks can be really demoralizing for younger players as well, because like, but I got that 20. And I like to whine about it because it annoys my DM.
All right. Okay. Just keeping an eye on the time. Don't mind me. Let's see. The next one that we are going to go to is, let's see. We have a question. David Telstra, I'm skipping that question. The question is, can you drink a water elemental? That's his new thing to come in and ask now. So
I'm going to throw that at my players next time I see them.
There you go.
That's going to be tomorrow's topic of discussion.
All right. Let's see. So another question that we got came in from Freighter Chaos, and the question is, do you guys play your PCs with normal voice, or do you put voices on to bring your characters more to life?
always voice. Even if it's bad, even if it sucks, I always use a voice.
The only time I ever tried an accent, it was so bad that my DM told me not to do it anymore, so I never did it again. My voice
That's
is my
pretty
character.
good.
That reminds me of a character from Tasmanian Devil. From the cartoon Tasmanian Devil, where they're all in down in Tasmania. I don't know why that reminds me of that, but that's just what I got in my head when you spoke. I'm really bad with accents. I can do a Cornish accent, and that's about it. So all my NPCs, my players are basically in
Are
Cornwall.
Cornish.
Wherever we're playing, my NPCs are basically in Cornwall. You know, whatever. It doesn't matter if they've travelled across the country to other continents. The bartender is from Cornwall. It's a simple. Yeah, it's bad. It's borderline offensive. I don't mean it to be, but I try and do an accent. It's borderline offensive. So my playable characters did just sound like me. I maybe sort of put a slightly harsher or softer inflection on there, but other than that, I'm not risking getting shouted at for being rude. I can do Cornish, and it's about as much as you get out of me, but I'm not making my PCs Cornish because no one needs to hear that for 3 or 4 hours a week. It's too much.
I have a player character that I do an accent for, but most of them, I think it's like you said, Holly, like pitching my own voice a little differently, or like having a different speaking pattern, or like a different vocabulary set that the person relies on. Like one character didn't use contractions, so she wouldn't say didn't, she would say did not, and things like that, right?
Yeah.
But for NPCs, I am a little more adventurous with accents, but yeah, I'm not great at doing them, but it's nice to try to differentiate NPCs so they don't all sound exactly like me.
I play with some fantastic players. I play with some brilliant players who, you know, one of my players could genuinely be a voice actor, and I love listening to him when he plays because his accents are always spot on for the character he's playing. They're perfect. I have another player who puts on the most borderline offensive Irish accent you've ever heard. But it's this side of safe, so it's fine, and it's just funny. But yeah, no, like you said, I pitch it or change my vocabulary a little bit because there's no way I'm upsetting anybody with how bad mine sound.
Yeah, I can't do voices to save my life, so I don't even try. But kind of like Sheryl was saying, I will do things like with the way that I speak, like my speech patterns, or I was talking about this, I think last week or the week before, but how one time I played a character who used a lot of malapropisms, which is like screwing up one word in a common phrase. So, you know, instead of saying, try to be more specific, they would say like try to be more Pacific or something like that. And they did that like all the time. So, or they'd screw up their like little sayings and stuff like that. Like I'm trying to think of one now. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him, instead of you can't make him drink, it would be, what's that?
Cross the bridge.
Yeah, something like that, you know. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him lie in it.
Why don't you make like a leaf and get the hell out of here?
I like that one. Use that one.
I feel like that's such a good one though, because like Holly was saying about like voices fitting the character, like a character that makes or uses malapropisms, like that tells you something about who they are, and not just like the way they talk.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are just about at that time that we need to start wrapping up, believe it or not. So what I'm going to do is I am going to have everybody go back around and just, again, remind us of who you are and where we can find you on the internet. And last chance, if you have anything coming up to make sure you get to shout that out. So we're going to go in the reverse order of the way we went before. So Sheryl, we're going to start with you.
Oh gosh, no pressure. Once again, I have been and will continue to be Sheryl.
I hope so.
I hope so. You can find me individually online on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube as The Roving Naturalist, and you can find the other, the TTRPG-related project that I do on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and podcast platforms. It's called Nature Check, and it's a bunch of scientists playing video games and TTRPGs. We play some Sundays every month. We don't have a set schedule because it's hard to herd cats. And also, just on Friday, an episode of a show was released where I was the guest. So my friend Andrew Ratziel in the chat runs the First Watch, and he has been doing a series called The Inn at the Edge of Greenwood. So basically it's an inn tavern sort of out in the middle of nowhere where the planes constantly shift, and so characters from wherever and whatever home game wind up at that tavern and then have a conversation with the innkeeper where they tell a story from their home campaigns. And so I got to be in one on Friday, which was really fun.
That's
so
really cool.
Awesome.
It's a really
Nice.
cool series. I love the concept. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming to hang out. I'm glad we had the chance to connect and get to know you a little better. So thank you. Let's see. We'll go to Holly next.
Yeah, so, again, I'm Holly. You can find me on Twitter at Manatee Tartan. Not Tartan Manatee, which is meant to be. For some reason, it turned it around the other way. You can find me at Tartan Manatee on Twitch for when I stream Baldur's Gate on the PC and a few other bits and pieces. As I mentioned earlier, I'm one of the writers of Disaster Hamsters with Samuel from Plot Hooks, and we have another project we're currently working on, Villagers, which will be out soon. We're really excited to share that with you. And if you can, next month, I will be taking part in a live stream charity one-shot with the fantastic Wilbo Baggins. So please go and check out Wilbo on Twitter. I'm really excited for this. We're raising money for the UK charity Mind with a one-shot that will be here on Twitch. And I will be using the Mustangs art combat wheelchair for my character. So getting to use the wheelchair, put a bit more sort of focus out there on that, how fantastic of a resource that is, and how it's a free resource. Mustang's Art makes no money off of this. It's a free resource for people out there to use to bring accessibility and inclusivity into their games. So I'll be using that for the charity game that we're playing, and I'm really excited, and I hope you guys can come and watch it.
Awesome.
Thanks very much.
That sounds so much fun, and
It's gonna be great.
And Wilbo is super fantastic, so I'm a little bit jealous on that front.
I am really glad I'm doing it.
I hope it goes really well, and hopefully
you.
I can swing by and check it out.
Links will be up soon.
Yeah. Let's see. Next we'll go over to PressXToJump.
Well, I'm still Steven, and I'm still alive. I made it through the stream. And you can find me on Twitter at RocketHeart, H-A-R-T. And then you can find me at twitch.tv/PressXToJump26, where this Saturday night I'm going to start Shepherd Saturdays with the new Let's Play series for Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Going to be going back through my favorite game series of all time, and I hope you all will join me.
Awesome. That will be super fun. So I hope that goes really well for you. And thanks for coming on and hanging out. It was great to have you on for the whole episode this time.
Yes.
Ryan, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, I've been Ryan. And yeah, you can find me on on Twitter. I run the @DicePopuli account. I also run I think it's run_DMG because DMG_run was taken by somebody. But I run that, and from that account, I also link out every time I post a video on YouTube. And they're like YouTube shorts / TikToks, so they're less than a minute, just informative little bits of D&D history or like meme kind of like funny content. But yeah, I did it to basically teach myself how to edit video and audio. So I've been just using that as a tool to kind of like push myself forward into something, but it's a lot of fun. I take questions. I have a huge book collection that I reference. So if you have any questions about Dungeons and Dragons, let me know, and I might have the answer.
And if he doesn't, maybe he'll do a video on it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Ryan, for coming to hang out. It's always a pleasure to get to chat with you. So
I love coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And next we'll go up to Samuel.
Yes, I have been and continue to be Samuel, the founder of Plot Hooks. You started a thing now. Now we have to continue it.
Sure.
The As we mentioned earlier, lots of toes in mini ponds. So we'll just say find us on social media at Plot Hooks. That's where you'll find lots of information about everything that we do. Lots of stuff is always up on our Patreon, as well as we just launched our merch store today. So there's lots of stuff that's happening. Just follow us on social media, and you'll find out all the information there.
Awesome. Well, thank you also for coming on and hanging out today. I love when I get the chance to catch up with you a little bit, and yeah, it's super great. And so I am and will continue to be Luna. And this has been and will continue to be Tales from the Tavern. We are here every Sunday night from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Next week will be a really great week. We are doing a fundraiser next week for No Kid Hungry. So if you are available and able to stop by, we would love to see you. Even if you can just help us get the word out, that would be awesome too. We're teaming up with several other channels that are also going to be participating in that fundraiser. If you can't swing by Sunday, our Tuesday night stream, which is also at 8 p.m. Eastern, and that is Ripples in the Gray, our Star Wars Fantasy Flight game. That will also be participating in the fundraiser. That will be the last night of that fundraiser. So we'd love it if you could, share the word and give us a retweet on Twitter when we get more information out as we receive it. And then Wednesday nights, you can catch our 50 Shades of Crimson, which is our Pathfinder First Edition campaign, which is a couple episodes into our second season now. And again, all times 8 p.m. Eastern. All of our start times are 8 p.m. Eastern. And I think that's all the news we have today. So we are going to go, let's see, who are we going to go say hi to? Let's go say hi to our friends at Total Party Chill. We haven't gotten to see them very much lately, so we're going to drop a raid for them. And let's see. I got to make sure I type this correct. Okay. Let's see. Total Party Chill. And we will see you all next week when we're back again for another Tales from the Tavern. Have a great night, everybody.